Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, if you are a member of the press or media, please disconnect at this time. This is a restricted line. Any unauthorized party in this meeting or any unauthorized use of the information communicated in this meeting is subject to prosecution to the fullest extent of the law. Any unauthorized person, including the media, who is on the line at this time, please disconnect. Please note, today's call is being recorded.
Thank you for joining the second session of Wells Fargo's Connect to More speaker series. I am really excited to have you here with me as we delve into today's discussion about the power of networking. I'm Anne Marie Lynch, and I head up small business deposits at Wells Fargo. I'm also the president of our Women's Connection Employee Resource Group, and I have a lot of energy and passion around this topic. A strong network can build confidence and knowledge and create new business opportunities. It's important for all of us to have a strong network, but particularly it's important for entrepreneurs. Building a network can be challenging and scary and maybe feel inauthentic, and we're going to talk about all of that today. But it's really important to have a community of folks who can support you as you're striving to meet your professional goals. According to Business News Daily, 48%, that's almost half of women entrepreneurs, report that a lack of access to advisors and mentors limits their professional growth. These relationships are a difference maker for entrepreneurs, so it's really important to build a network with intention, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, to find the right advisors and mentors that can help give you the advice, knowledge, and connections you need to succeed. So I'm going to set the stage for today's discussion by introducing our speakers and give them an opportunity to share a little bit more about themselves. So I'm going to begin with Cami Taylor, the program director for the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. So Cami, I'm going to turn it over to you to share a little bit about yourself and about the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center.
Awesome, certainly. Well, my name is Cami Taylor, and I lead the Milestone Circles program at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. Now, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit that is building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. And one of the ways we do this is through the Milestone Circles program. This is a 12-week program designed to help women founders step away from the day-to-day pressures of being a business owner to focus on their biggest vision and gain clarity on their business priority for the next quarter. Then, through a combination of facilitated coaching, mentorship, and peer learning, participants embark on an incredible journey to accomplishing their transformative milestone. And in our work with entrepreneurs, we've recognized that the most important effective networks are formed through creating meaningful connections. And so this begins with building your own confidence, being clear with yourself of why you're doing this work and your vision of what you're hoping to attain. And so it is important to gain that level of clarity by recognizing your internal driver that gets you up to work on those early mornings, those hardest of the days, and also your vision, your hope, your dream, and the future that you're building. And so once you are able to develop that level of self-truth or understanding and clearly articulate this to others, you'll then begin to lead more meaningful networking conversations, and those meaningful conversations often become very memorable.
All right, thank you, Cami, and I know we're going to have a great discussion, and I can't wait to learn more about the Circles program. So next, I'm going to turn over to our next guest, who is Tarika Cardenas. She is the founder of Perceptive Engineering and Construction Services. And so, Tarika, I wanted to invite you to share a little bit about yourself as well as a little bit about your business.
Thanks, Anne Marie. As mentioned, my name is Tarika Cardenas. I'm the founder of Perceptive Engineering and Construction Services. We've been in business for 7 years this year, so super excited about that. Our focus is just bringing your project visions, illuminating them, and bringing them to a realization. So it's exciting to be able to take something that's nothing on a piece of paper and actually see it being constructed in some shape, form, or fashion. So while it is a grueling process, I have enjoyed working in that space for quite some time. As Cami mentioned with the circles, you get an opportunity to really dive into service. So service is something that's really super important to me. So as a part of that goal for service, I'm also the executive director of Persistence Development Foundation, which is a nonprofit that works to bridge that digital gap. So accessibility is something that is just a huge deal for a lot of communities, and it's just connecting those resources together. So I volunteer as opportunities present themselves, and I'm in a space now and a time in my life where philanthropy is really important. So I'm also part of another circle, a giving circle, Heritage Giving Fund, where now we can pool our finances together to support other nonprofits that are working in communities that are bridging the gap as well. So excited to be here today, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Tarika. Congratulations on 7 years in business. Yay! And I love hearing about all the different ways that you're giving back beyond just the circles, because I know sometimes we think about, well, I don't want to bother somebody. It's going to be an imposition with networking, but there are so many people just like you who are really excited to pay it forward and pass along what you've learned. So look forward to hearing more about that. I'm going to now turn to our third speaker here, Terry Beaujour. She's the founder of Momentum Tutoring. So Terry, same question to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Hi everyone, my name is Terry Beaujour and I am the founder and director of Momentum Tutoring. Momentum is a nonprofit 501c3 dedicated to providing tutoring, mentoring, and enrichment to K through 12 students in Santee, California. I was exceptionally drawn to mentor makers and the milestone circles because it's really reinforcing what I believe in with Momentum and I'm trying to do, just doing it with the younger ages, K through 12. And my biggest mission is building a network of people that are helping me make tutoring available, not just to people who are wealthy or not just to people who are given tutoring because of low income, but really bridging that gap and making it available to all people. And my networking advice, as I always tell myself and how I'm going to go forward, because I've been doing this for 14 years, and it does take a lot of perseverance going through the ups and downs. And so for me, making the impossible, I change that into I'm possible, and then I follow 4 habits. The first one is to always engage in some type of learning opportunity. Like I always give myself something each year. So for 2020, I gave myself mentor makers, milestone circles, and that's been my gift to myself. And then number 2 is I always build a network within the platforms that I'm learning on. And because that's where you find people who share your passions and you can find out what they're interested in. And then when you're building your network, you really need people that all kind of believe in the same mission. As you make those connections within the platform, I always believe in following up, because relationships aren't made like you see somebody and then they're going to remember you. You need to follow up and let them know and ask how they're doing. And that's really how you build a relationship and build on keeping tutors, keeping your clients and board members and potential donors. And then my final advice to myself and all of you as networkers is be patient with yourself and really kind of celebrate all the small wins. I know through this program, Cami and Tarika have been my major mentors, and they've really reinforced that. You know, take advantage of everything and celebrate the small stuff and don't beat yourself up. And so I'd highly recommend the program.
Oh, and that's so inspiring to hear. Thank you. And I love your four points that you brought out and how you framed it. You started with a gift to yourself. That's kind of a fun way to think about it. So now I'm going to get into the meat of our discussion and explore how to approach building a network with this group of experts. So to start, I wanted to think about how we frame up the concept of networking. And I alluded to this a little bit in my opening remarks, that the term networking can sometimes sound intimidating or difficult. What if we were to just reframe networking as simply building relationships? And I think Terry's talked about this a little bit in her intro. But I want to start with Cami on this, and then others can chime in. I'd love to hear how you've seen this approach work in your work, either personally or within the circles. So Cami?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so yeah, we've often hear entrepreneurs ask, like, when is the right time to connect? How do I connect? Or sometimes, like, and Terry said this earlier, to bother anyone. So yes, when we reframe networking to building relationships, it does open up a different thought process. Relationships building is getting to know one another, and so there's a give and a get on both ends. And so we encourage entrepreneurs to get curious, to ask questions. What would you like to learn? Sure, yes, you want to gain connections, to take your business to the next level from the interactions that during networking or opportunities that you build relationships with. But remember, you have a space and a place. You are walking into these conversations with your own sets of experiences and expertise and superpowers that may be of an asset to others.
All right. And Tarika, I know you've touched on this too a little bit on your intro. Anything you would add?
Yes, I think that I always looked at the word network, and I think it's like the engineer in me where you break out those two words where you're working to create this net. So where this net has these cross sections of different parts where there's some overlap between from one point to the next. And it takes work to create those intersections and really thinking through, who can, here's where I want to go. So who do I need to know in order to get into this space? Or what's some intentionality about networking? And to Cami's point, sometimes you're like, ooh, I don't really want to bother this person. And then sometimes I'm like, well, I got to bother you today because I got a goal that I want to meet. But it's important, even with the circles, it really was an opportunity to get into a room where you didn't get to choose who was a part of your group. So you had to find synergy where it existed. And sometimes with networking and that transition to like, yeah, there's work, but I love the idea of building relationships. Like you have to have a foundation and then you're another block and another block. Like what do we share? What are the synergies between us to where we can continue to connect? If it's just for one project, if it's just for an extended period of time, you allow things to kind of form themselves organically, kind of like the circles, where you find some way we connect, some common ground that we have to build those relationships. I think the biggest thing or takeaway for me is that it does take work, and it doesn't just come. You can't, as Terry mentioned, you can't just meet somebody one day and think that, well, we connected. Well, who do you know that you build a relationship with within an hour meeting session? Like you have to have something that you connected on, and then you're doing those calls, you're emailing, you're continuing to be intentional about connecting. But then building relationships looks different based on the industries that you're in and what types of relationships that you're trying to build. So all of those are really important, and you just have to be strategic about how you're going to approach it and follow through.
All right, and I want to pick up on something you said there, and maybe turn it over to Terry, because I think, Terry, you started us with this concept a little bit in your intro of building relationships. As you think about creating those synergies and how you really like cultivate those relationships, what are some things that have been key to you in terms of building relationships?
One, like I mentioned, it's attending events and learning opportunities where you're going to be meeting like-minded people,
Mm-hmm.
and then refining that interest. Okay, so here's a bunch of nonprofit leaders now who's really interested in combining our different things to help kids with education. So I kind of see it like that.
Yeah, so find some folks who have like interests, or if you're in the circle, you figure out what those are, I think is what Tarika was suggesting. So you have, oh, go ahead.
Number one thing after that is the follow-up. So what I would always do is reach back and email and send a little picture of the student that we were talking about or where the funds may have helped, and a little, invitation. Come and see the student working in the center. And so that's kind of how you build it, the email, the invitation to the center, oh, let's do something else.
And you keep it going from there, right?
Correct.
All right. And as we think about networks, so I've heard folks say, that women's networks are different from men's networks. And I wanted to explore that with you all a little bit. And I thought on this one, I would start with Tarika, because you're in an industry that traditionally you think of as more of a male-dominated industry. So I'd love to get your perspective to start us out on how you've seen women's networks be different from men's networks.
Well, interestingly enough, men talk to who they want to talk to, and and it can be challenging because they already kind of have a mindset and a perception of women, and they look to you like you're a sister or an aunt or a potential significant other. So setting the stage that you are a formidable counterpart can be a challenge, because when you walk into the space, the assumption is that you don't belong, or what are you doing here? And sometimes it's blatant and outright, and sometimes it's not. Men network differently in that there's not this emotional attachment that they're looking for. You have to be very upfront about what you can offer and what you want, right off the bat. And if you can't do that, then it's just, you kind of start treading into territory that you really don't want to tread into. But because it's not emotional, you have to know what you want. And, men want to go golfing, they want to go hunting, in my space. So it was a lot of different things that I wasn't akin to, but I was like, I got to get in this room. So it was like, I play poker, I golf. If I need to go clay shooting, I'll clay shoot too. So there wasn't really a space that you couldn't get into, but they still didn't want you there. So I had contractors or vendors that I wanted to build a network up because I liked their work. I wanted to continue working with them. And I was getting in the truck with one guy. We were, they come and take you for lunch or whatever. And I noticed he had boots. His truck was all muddy or whatever. And I said, you've been looks like you either on your way hunting or you just came back. He said, oh yeah, we went duck hunting last week, and we're going again next week. And I said, well, you know what? I've never been duck hunting. I'd like to go. And he kind of like, oh, like, you too scared to tell me no because I'm signing these good contracts for you. So he's like, yeah, we'll look into that. So then he offered something else. And I said, so I know you don't want me with the boys, but as a part of building this relationship, we're going to have to find something that we can do collectively, so you don't get excluded. So you have to be very intentional, and you have to be aggressive sometimes about building those relationships and standing your ground. Men can be amazing allies, especially in the space that I'm in. It's a male-dominated space. So there are a lot of times where I'm the only woman in the room. And then, that's one minority, and then you're a woman of color. So you have all of those different dynamics, and you can't be intimidated by being the only one. It's like, how do I use this as an asset? How do I find a need? Or what's an issue where my company or even myself personally, I'm an answer to. But it does take, you can't be soft. I mean, you really, if you're dealing with men, you got some where you have to really kind of set the stage for, this is what I'm here for. This is where I think we can connect, where we can work together, and just being clear on it. So what role, you want to play. But it's a different ball game for sure.
All right, so I'm just like imagining you in your camouflage right now.
Look,
that cunning.
It's almost like this dance of how do you connect with people. So in the construction industry, folks have a few lanes that they play in, and you have to be able to play in the lanes that they play in, or you push that envelope to say, that's fine. If we don't know how to clay shoot, I think one support group or committee meeting we said, why don't we have a training session? Because the assumption was that all men knew how to clay shoot, and all of them didn't know how to clay shoot. And it was just the women that didn't know how to clay shoot. Well, we suggested, how about we do an event where we can just do like a quick training session. We can have some fun. We can turn into like a happy hour. And it was more guys raising their hand about attending than it was women. So there's a lot of assumptions about how you can network. So in the engineering space, it was very similar in that same male-dominated space. So you had to prove that you know what you know. And it can get exhausting. It can get very exhausting. So in my space, sometimes people didn't believe you were the owner of the company. So I may have another project manager with me or another contractor, and, they're looking at, they're talking to them, like, hey, what do you think about doing this? Or let's connect later on some other projects, and, let me know what you think about working with us. And they turn and say, well, I can't answer that. You might want to talk to my boss. And so then it's this awkward silence because I'm just letting it unfold, because now you've made an assumption, and, like, okay. And I think some of those, the lines it's just different now. So I think everyone has, where there were certain roles that existed, 10, 15, 20 years ago, those lines are different. So women are doing a lot of different things that they didn't do a long time ago. And men are, we got to learn how to mesh and cross barriers as necessary and be able to go back and forth. So it's not like I'm in the boys club. I don't have to be one of the boys to be in the club and to network with men. And that was where the evolution came for me. Like, I can still be Tarika. I don't have to fully adjust and change who I am in order to be a part of the network, because now I build this relationship based on some falsehood. Like, this is not who I am. The truth is, I don't want to go hunting. I don't want to go hunting at all. But I need you to think that I'm willing to go if that's what it takes to get the job done. But I need to be honest with you. And I don't have to, I'm not wanting to go because I'm a woman. It's just not something that I'm interested in. So it's being able to kind of say, hey, that's not a level that we connect, but there are other levels that we connect on. Let's find that, and let's be open enough to find those to be able to build a relationship.
Yeah. Let me see here. So, you found you're in more of a male-dominated industry. Maybe turning over to Terry, how have you found that women's networks are different from women's networks in your industry?
So where Tarika is in more of a male-dominated, I am in education, which is a more of a female-dominated. Mm-hmm. And whereas a lot of myself and a lot of my colleagues are educated in education and how to do school and how to really make a difference there, I don't have business experience, or I do now, 14 years, but I didn't when I started. I started with just a mission and no real knowledge on how to run the business. And so it's been instrumental for different men in my life to come in and give me their business advice, especially financial. So I've really appreciated that. But I search out a women's network when I'm looking for more empathetic. So, you know, as a founder, you're not only busy dealing with the business, sometimes you have kids and caretaking responsibilities. Like, for instance, my mom recently passed in February, and, you know, there was so much going on that I really leaned into Cami and Tarika during that quarter, because I needed somebody outside my family, outside of my network, to really just keep on encouraging me and letting me know, giving me ways to go out. So I feel it's really important that you have both men and women in your network.
I'm going to pull that thread a little bit because you now got into another topic I wanted to explore. So we talked about how men and women's networks can be different. And what you started to bring into the conversation is, what are the benefits of having a women's network? And so I wanted to just explore that a little bit, like the difference between having women in your network versus having men in your network. And I think what you talked about here was a little bit about some shared experiences of that women have, and you can really find a network of folks who can help you through that. Let me throw this out to others in the group as well to get their perspectives on what are some of the benefits of having women networks. And maybe, Cami, I can go to you as you kind of oversee the Circles program. What is your perspective on the benefits of having women networks?
Yes, definitely that support layer. Within our circles, what's been so powerful about this experience for our women entrepreneurs and our participants is that they come to the circle with absolute strangers from all across the country and develop a bond, and sometimes a very short period of time, just off the strength of, we are all women founders. We all wear so many hats, whether it's as an entrepreneur, as a founder, or as a mom, a wife, however we wear, whatever, all those hats that we wear. And we come into a place with similar challenges, and we lean on each other. And so it kind of speaks to what we have been talking about so far as how women go about making and building relationships. And so many a times when we are in our circle, women will come, and and we have a no judgment zone. So they'll come, and it's like, we start off our biweekly sessions with, what have you done for yourself? That's our point where we just level off. And we hear so many stories, and the women do find bonds that they are able to make, and relationships that they are able to build with women who they're inside of their own home and their own cities, and no one understands what they're doing. You decided to go on this path to build this business. I don't know why you're doing this. And so their friends and family at home, they don't understand. But the women within the circle who are also entrepreneurs, who are also dealing with the same struggles with home and with business, they understand. So it is a very unique bond and a very unique relationship that is specifically formed with women entrepreneurs when they work and bond together.
That is just so powerful. And I'm going to go over to you, Tarika, and first to see if you have anything to add, but then I would also like to get your perspective on having men in your network. So I think both you and Terry have touched on this a little bit, but anything to add about having women networks, and then pivot over to the benefits of having men in your network and men as allies.
Absolutely. I think with having a diverse network of people of genders, male and female, within your circles, it helps to, I think, one, with men can be allies for you. So to make sure, just making sure that it doesn't roll into more of a protective space. But to have an ally to really, you align yourself with someone that has seen your work, they understand what your capabilities are, and they stand up behind you in a supporting role, like, hey, wow, this is a very sharp individual, their company's spot on. And it goes a long way, because then you can win on another network that you may have not had direct contact with. With women, there's instant advocacy. Like, women are like, I'm supporting you. It's like girl power, magic, let's hold hands. What are you trying to do? I'm there for you. And I think that's that benefit of women, where it's instant advocacy and instant support. Now, the only thing is, in having both in the network, or maybe having a primarily male network of folks, there's not a lot of competition. So they kind of follow, like, where are you going? They, sometimes they care about who you're working with, sometimes they don't. It's just, hey, what can we do together? It's all about business. Whereas with women, it is much more of a deeper level of connecting. Women want to not just meet, where men, like, we can meet, we can connect, we can work together. And if I see you somewhere else, it's like, hey, we don't have to keep talking to one another. Done. Women want to stay connected. And they don't just want to connect on just a professional level. A lot of times it's a personal level. So you start kind of bridging unintentionally this sisterhood. But there's benefits to both, to where there's strength in numbers. I've had it where some peers of mine, if I'm going into a space, and initially I was a solopreneur, where I'd have 2 or 3 go-to people, where I'm like, I'm going into this meeting, I'm not going by myself. So today you're going to be a COO, and you are going to be an admin. So they're like, oh, shoot, what do I need to wear? What do I need to say? So women will show up and support and play any role that's necessary. I've done it for peers as they were growing their businesses. Like, I want you to succeed, even if, the reciprocity for me may just be seeing you succeed. And that's enough. So you build that network of people that care about what stages that you're in. And women care. They care about what you're doing. Like, as Terry mentioned, like, if we see that someone wasn't all together in the circle, like, we stopped. It was like, you can't be a successful business owner and create this network and this synergy if you got 50 million things going on personally. Do you want to talk about it? Do you need a minute? And I think women ask those questions. So having that network, the benefits of both, is like, you really can get balance. I think with women in your network and building relationships with women that are professionals in the space that you're trying to get into or already into, it helps with creating that balance. Like, they understand that if I say, hey, I was late today because I had to pick my son up, or I had a doctor's appointment, or my daughter started her, it's like, you got all these different things, like, oh my God, well, they're willing to, they'll put on a different hat, and they'll show up as whatever you need in that moment. Whereas sometimes, not all men, but most men, it's business as usual. So you kind of have 1 or 2 lanes that you can kind of play in with men in your network, but it's primarily professional. And I found that if you build those relationships with men, you can also develop that advocacy, but you may have to cross a few more bridges for some of the balance that you get with women. Now, my challenge sometimes with women, they want a lot of things to be personal. And sometimes it's just like, hey, we're working on this project. I think you're great, but after this project, it was nice knowing you, and let's move on to something else. And sometimes that's the reality of building that network, is deciding what space, what are these overlaps? What are these synergies that we have, to where I think with women, you can have a connection, and sometimes you have to work a little bit more to maintain those connections. Whereas with men, you can work on a project, 1 month or 1 year. You not talk to them for a year or 2, you can pick up that phone, call them back, reference a project or some work that you've done together, or see them somewhere, and you can pick up right where you left off. So both advantages to having a different level of advocacy where men can kind of stand up for you in a room, they can speak for you when you're in a room, and sometimes it's good to have the strength of a male network or a male counterpart in your space in addition to women. So just balancing that out and benefiting from both sides of the emotional support, the empathy of women, as well as sometimes that the alpha portion of men where they're not so emotional, but they care about the success of you and those that you're connected to as well.
And I love how you frame that up in terms of balance, and gave some really good examples of the type of what each can contribute. And I want to bring this back to Terry, because you got us started on this, going down this road a little bit, and just see if there's anything else you would add about having women in your network, and then the importance of having men in your network as allies.
Well, it wasn't really brought up today, but through the mentor circles, I've also learned that women have been undervalued for years. And for us to get like equal pay and things like that is a challenge. And so I found that I need males in my network to figure out how to do that financially, become more stable. But I also need women in my network to make it happen for other women, because I really believe that it's going to be me and my team fighting for us to get paid what we should. And so it's got to be a balance. I got to have people who know what they're doing and know how to do it, and then also advocate to get women the value that we're working towards.
Amen.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's really good. Terry touched on something that, you have this disparity with networking where, at the executive level, it's male dominated too. So as you think about equal pay, equal representation, it's just dealing with the reality of some of those disparities of who you need to connect with and where. And you're right. Sometimes you have to networking and building those relationships. Like you have to sit down with your team and say, what do we need? Here's where we are right now. Where do we want to go? What do we need? And once you decide what you need, it's like, who do we need in order to procure those resources to get what we need? And now you're right. It's like at that point, it's like, I want us to get, the right value for the work that we're doing. And who can help us with determining what is that value proposition for our customers and clients, and then how do we get it? And when you meet that no, it's like, okay, well, I need someone in a decision-making position. I have a great relationship with the lady at the front desk, and it's like she can give you some information on what's going on, so you build that relationship with some of those frontline people to help you gain access to some of the other executives. But you're right, you have to be nimble enough to be able to pull on just what you need to get who you need too.
And I want to pull on that thread a little bit. And you talked about like getting what you need, and I think you started getting into talking about intentionality and being strategic about our building a network. As you all have all noted, it takes time and it's an investment. And so it is really important to be really intentional and strategic about how you build your network. And I want to turn for a second over to Cammie and see what advice you would share with all of us about how to go about doing that.
So I always tell the women in the circle when they ask the question, like, how do I get out there, ask for what you need, go get it. That's my first advice I always share. But at the center, we have free classes, tools, and resources to help support you in building relationships. And so you may learn more about the Milestone Circles program or just NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and the resources that we have at thecenter.nasdaq.org. But yeah, number one, I always just jump out there. Just get out there and ask for what you want. I guarantee you, you are not the first. You will not be the last.
All right. Any other advice from Terry or Tarika that we haven't touched on yet about how to be strategic and intentional about your network?
I was going to say Cammie's a beast. So I think every public forum I get on, I'm going to say it. And she's probably tired of me saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it. Sorry, Cammie. I say that because when you, with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, when you know, even the term circles, like you're building this network, and even that, as Terry mentioned, was something she did for herself. A lot of times as women in building our networks and what we work toward, even as women entrepreneurs, we serve so many other causes and while neglecting our own. And I think with the experience when the circle as a participant and then as an alum and as a mentor, it was really that mindset that Cammie gave where you really you can go in and sometimes it's all business. And it helped me to really see, like, that first question was, what have you done for yourself? And you like, you know what, I haven't done anything for myself today or this week, but you wanted to really take a moment to say, what did you do for yourself? And I think even with creating those networks or having things like the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center or those milestone circles that cater to women founders is super important. And I think where you, as Cammie mentioned, here's this advice to just get out there. It was like, literally, if you opened your mouth and said that you needed to connect with someone, Cammie and her team made sure you got a phone call or an email from them in literally maybe 24 to 48 hours. So it was up to you. It was like, if you opened your mouth and said what you need, the center worked to get you those, gain access to touch those resources. So a lot of building those relationships is like speaking up. She was like, speak up, get out there, go do it. And then that same sentiment was transferred as a mentor for me. Like the circles that I mentored, I said, you have access to a plethora of resources. A closed mouth does not get fed. So if you are hungry and you want to pursue your goal and you want to hit these milestones, pull on the resources that are at your disposal during these weeks. So you have access to a network of people that are experts in accounting, experts in sales and marketing, experts in finance. It would behoove you to take full advantage of those resources when all you have to do, as Cammie and her team mentioned, was like, just open your mouth. Just say what you need and go out there and get it. And you have a team of people that are supporting you during this 12-week period that are, you know, here's your circle, here's those that are external to your circle that'll help you get where you need to go. So if you sat in silence in those bi-weekly meetings, then it's like, shame on you. You know, like, it was finding out that, wow, I didn't know, like, oh, so you're in California. I'm going to be in California next week for an event. Oh, do you need support? Well, oh, okay. Well, I have a team of people that can provide sound equipment or even catering services to you for your event. Like, let's connect. If I had not opened my mouth and said anything, I would have missed that opportunity. So a bigger part of those networking experiences and building those relationships, you got to speak up. You can't sit and say, well, I don't have anyone to connect with. Sometimes just the power of your words and what you're saying opens the door for you to receive what you need. So it's just saying something. Sometimes it's as simple as saying something, and it spurred people into action. Like Cammie is like, oh, even if you said what you were doing, she was like, hey, I found somebody that I think you may need to connect with. And it's like, yes, ma'am. You know, so, and there's, you know, circle 22 or circle, you know, so you just had to, the center worked to push you to create that network. Like, they really push you to develop those synergies, to find those touch points and connect with like-minded people. And you had help with someone saying, I think that you may connect well with this individual. Let me do an introduction for you. If it goes somewhere, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. If we were off, that's fine too. But there was no lack of trying and support. So in speaking up, if you open your mouth, it opened the door to a plethora of other resources and opportunities to network as well.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing in terms of being strategic is I'm hearing you all say, like, you really need to be clear about where you're trying to go and what you need.
Absolutely.
Then you need to find different types of networks that can help you with that. Some are men, some are women, some are entrepreneurial circles, some are NAVO, or lots of different places. And then you need to just speak up and raise your hand and, you know, let folks know what you need so they can come and help you.
Yeah.
We are going to have some time for audience questions. So I just wanted to let you all know, start thinking about any questions that you have. And if you have a question, just raise your hand in the meeting. And I have my colleague, Val Jones, who's going to be the wizard behind the curtain, who's going to help me monitor the Q&A. But we're going to go into right now a speed round here, and I have 5 common myths about networking, and I'm going to ask each of our speakers just to give us a sentence, maybe 2, of their reaction to each of these myths. And those of you in the audience, if you have a reaction, raise your hand and we'll open it up for questions right after this and thoughts. So number 1, speed round. Networking is a waste of time. I don't have the time as a business owner. Terry.
You got to make the time. You want to be able to work on your business, because when you're only working in your business, you kind of get into a rut and you're not able to make those connections to take you to the next level.
All right, Cammie.
Networking is only for extroverts. Absolutely not. Anyone can build relationships or network, introverts too.
All right, so that's another one of our myths. And anyone else have a speed round chime in for networking is only for extroverts?
Oh, good. Ooh, Cameron, you're an extrovert. Aren't you an extrovert?
No, I'm not. I'm an introvert.
You masquerading. You masquerading as a
Which is why it's not only for extroverts.
I agree. I think you have to be able to have the courage enough to say what you need and voice it, but in that strategy. I agree. I think that sometimes you feel like you're walking into a room full of people and you got to be like, hey, you know, greeting everybody, and you think that you have to be that way. I had a peer of mine where she's like, she kind of like Cammie, a closet introvert, extrovert. Like when she's in front of people, she can turn it on. But she was just strategic. And I thought when you networked, you had to walk into a room and you had to talk to everybody. And it's like, you don't have to talk to everybody. So she was laser focused. So mine was relationships should be spontaneous. They don't have to be spontaneous. You can be very strategic. You can research the attendee list for an event. You can go down the list and start strategizing and say, I know there's 100 people in this room. I'm intimidated about the thought of having to talk to all 100 people in this room. I only need to connect with 5. And as Terry mentioned, you know, you got the time. I have time to connect with 5. And I even go in thinking about who do I need to connect with and who are some other colleagues I have in business that this may be somebody they need to connect with. So I'm always thinking about other people like, oh, this would be great. You know, let me build a relationship with them just in case somebody else needs something. So it doesn't have to be spontaneous. You can be very strategic, very intentional. You can prepare. You can have everything lined out. So that's another myth. So it helps deal with the anxiety if you're not an extrovert. If you're an introvert, then you can kind of just tunnel vision and focus in and say, if I talk to at least these 5 people, then I've met my goal for this evening. Anything outside of that is like icing on the cake.
And I have to say, I'm joining you all as an introvert, and you just gave me a great tip for how to deal with those large networking meetings. All right, next myth, your trusted inner circle are your most important relationships. Terry, what do you think about that one?
I would say that they are very, very important, but in order to protect my trusted relationships, my closest circles, I need to always be finding outside sources and bringing
That's good.
always. That's my job with the company, is to bring in people who support me and them.
That's good.
All right. And I have one more myth, and this one is that networking is inauthentic and self-serving. So, Tarika, how would you respond to that?
You know what? I guess it's part myth, part true. I think as you serve, a part of serving is serving with the expectation of you get something out of it. So I think if you walk into the space, it's not inauthentic if you prepare and you're ready and you're just like, oh, I'm just going through the motions. It can be very authentic if you look at it from a perspective of building a relationship. And building a relationship, that means I want continued connection. So as I'm serving, I'm looking for ways to serve in your network or in your community. And by doing that, I'm serving myself because I'm creating a connection that hopefully yields some reciprocity. So as I give into you, I'm going to reap some benefit out of it. But if you go into it with the mindset of, well, I'm just serving myself, you don't get as much out of building that relationship if there's no give and take in it. And you can be inauthentic in networking or building your network, but you have to decide, look, I'm going to be me. It's too much work. As I've gotten older, it's just too much work to try to be someone, one space in a room, and then try to switch it off and be something else. It's like, be who you are, be as authentic as you can, so you build the relationship with some level of truth and integrity. Like, this is who you're going to be working with. This is who you may potentially be in partnership with. This is the types of projects that we're doing. This is, what we anticipate doing. These are things or causes that are important to me. So that's my truth. That's my authenticity, is just that. So I always approach with serving, how can I serve your cause? What can I do to serve you? And 100% of the time, I always get what I need. Even if I didn't know what I needed, I always managed to get what I need because I started out thinking about the other individual versus thinking about myself. Now, I have in my mind what my organization needs. And as Terry mentioned, what does my team need? So I'm venturing outside of the circle to get that. But it can be self-serving, but I think as you serve yourself with the mindset of serving others, there's always some reciprocity built into it. So it ends up being cyclical if your focus is on what can I do for you? First, like, here's me, I'm bringing myself to the table. Here's the value that my organization and my team has. How can we serve the vision and mission of your organization? Great. Then how can that translate into projects and work for you? Because I approached you with, this is what can we do for you? Not in a salesy way. I think sometimes that inauthenticity can come if I'm trying to sell you something instead of just trying to sell myself, or just even like if you walk into it and be authentic, like, I'm just trying to build a relationship. That may take a week, it may take a month, it may take 6 months to do so, but I just want to build a relationship. And you're authentic about what your needs are and what you're looking for. I think it can be a great start to something really fulfilling if you're looking to serve others.
I think, Tarika, you took us all the way back to where we started on framing it up as building relationships. So let's see here. I'm not seeing any questions from my colleague Val in the chat. Let me do one more speed round question for the group. Final thoughts on this topic. So maybe, Cammie, we can start with you.
Give yourself grace Don't beat yourself up with what you should have said. Oh, I should have talked to one more person. Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. Give yourself grace. Building relationships is an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. And so commit to a growth mindset and process of continuous learning.
All right. Terry, final thoughts.
Don't be afraid of what you don't know, because you don't know a lot. And if you stop yourself from moving forward because you don't know something or something's not in place, then that's going to stop you from moving forward. So it's okay to learn a little bit at a time. It's okay to bring one person into your network at a time. And while you're doing it, like Cami and Tarika have reinforced with me, is have grace with yourself and celebrate those little ones. Don't beat yourself up over everything.
All right. Have grace. Do it one at a time. Tarika, final thoughts?
One thing I have to remind myself is there is power in your presence. And you take that power in your presence into any room that you walk into, that you deserve to be in those spaces. Like, you have earned the right, you have the worth to connect with who you want to connect with. That if you have, and you remind yourself of the value that you possess, you'll never be as intimidated when you walk into a room. As Terry and Cami mentioned, is you give yourself that grace to say, maybe I wanted to connect with someone and I didn't get an opportunity to connect on the level that I wanted to connect on, or this relationship didn't really evolve into something that I really wanted it to evolve in. But at the end of the day, I still hold the same value I held at the first hello, or at the unanswered email, or the unanswered text, or the unanswered call, that I'm still worth connecting with. Even if someone doesn't agree with the value that I have in myself or my organization, or even those folks that I'm connected with of the other networks, that I still have that value, and I'm worth building a relationship with. And I don't have to always chase certain networks, but it's okay to stand still and trust that you can be pursued as well. So I think that works in both ways, to trust the process of networking and trust the process of building relationships, that if you cultivate it like a garden, you'll reap a harvest. You just have to know what you need to do. And what you do for a tomato plant is not the same work and effort that you do for an apple tree or a peach tree or a bell pepper plant. So being in tune enough with who you're wanting to build a relationship with, so what do I need to do in order to cultivate this? Some require a little bit more time and attention, and some don't. So having that wisdom to know, what am I wanting to build? What type of relationship am I wanting to build? Is this just a CPA I want to connect with, that I just need help with accounting, so I don't have one in my network? Maybe I can connect with the network to gain access to another network to get there. So it's just being open and flexible, to just keep your eyes open, your ears open, and your mind open, to be able to really receive and not kind of box things in. Like, someone could have access to something, or there could be so many depths to an individual that you did not really see just from an encounter at a 30-minute or a happy hour or at an event. But if you allow yourself to really say, hey, this is what I want to build, this is what I'm willing to sacrifice to cultivate, then you'll reap that harvest. So definitely being open-minded and building those relationships, and understanding your worth, and being willing to chase, as well as being open enough to be pursued, that you're worth connecting with, and remembering that too.
All right. So with that, Terry, Tarika, Cami, you are amazing women, and I have really enjoyed our conversation today. And I hope the folks in our audience have as well, and it's given folks some inspiration and actionable ideas to build a strong, supportive network of relationships. So I'd like to take a moment again to thank our panel for sharing your insights today. And I want to thank the audience for taking the time to join our discussion. I want to invite everyone to please visit the Wells Fargo Connect to More site to learn more about the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center coaching circles and find additional information for women entrepreneurs. So thank you for joining us, and we wish you continued success in your entrepreneurial journey.